we're going to be looking at rounding numbers up to the nearest million. Rounding means making a number simpler but keeping its value close to what it was. The result is less accurate but easier to use. So we round to make a number easier to understand, and it's a very useful tool when estimating numbers. In year 4, you rounded numbers up to 1000, but in year 5 you must round up to the nearest million, which we practiced back in September. Rounding can be very easy if we follow the very simple rules which are shown here in this poem. Now, you would have seen this poem before in maths, and I'll pop it up at the end for you to do some more practice. So it says, find your number, look next door, 4 or less, just ignore, 5 or more, add 1 more. Now the first number that we're going to focus on today is the number 5,384,276. And now we're going to use the same number and we're going to round it all the way up from the nearest 10 up to the nearest million. Okay, so first thing we do is we put our place value subheadings on, so it's easier to see which column we'll be looking in. So we've got our ones, our tens, our hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions. I hope that's clear. So we find our number. So we're rounding to the nearest 10. So we find our tens number. So 7. Underline the 7. We look next door. So we find our 7. We look next door. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. So it's a 5 or more, so we add 1 more. Now, this is where lots of you get confused. You keep all of the digits all the way up until the tens column the same. So, 5,384,200. Now this is where it changes. So the 6 has told us to add 1 more to the 7, and we know 1 more added on to 7 is 8. And then any numbers from the column you've just looked at to the right, you must replace with zeros. Again, this is something that you find tricky. You must remember, when you've rounded the number in the column you're focusing on, any number to the right must be a 0. Moving on to the nearest 100. Again, I'm just going to use the subheadings from the top for all of them, so I won't write them all down again. So, I'm rounding to the nearest 100 this time, so I must find my 100 column, or 100 column rather. So it's here, it's the 200. So I need to underline the column that I'm focusing on. I must look right next door. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, add 1 more. So I know that the 7 is more than 5. So the 7 will add 1 more to the 2. So when I write it down, again, keeping all of these numbers the same. Now, because it's a 7, I must add 1 more to the 2, making it a 3. Any number after the hundreds column, because I've just rounded to the nearest 100, must be zeros. So I've rounded the hundreds column. Now the 2 numbers to the right of the hundreds column, the tens and the ones, they must be zeros. Now the thousands column. I must find my thousands number, and it's 4,000. I must look right next door, which is a 2. I know the 2 is less than 4, so I'm just going to ignore adding 1 more. I'm going to keep it as 4. So again, when I write it, all of these digits stay the same because I've only rounded the thousands column. So the rest of the columns to the left, they do not change. Now the 4 will stay the same because the hundreds column, which was my number next door, it's less than 4. Now all of the numbers to the right of the thousands column must become zeros. Now rounding to the nearest 10,000. I find my 10,000s column here, 80,000. I look right next door, it's a 4. 4 or less, just ignore. So again, the 8 will stay the same. So my number will be 5,300,000, and I keep the 8 the same because my number next door is a 4. And then every number after the column I've just rounded must be replaced with zeros. Okay, so my number will be 5,380,000. Now to round to the nearest 100,000. Find my 100,000 column, 300,000, underline it. I look next door. 5 or more, so I add 1 more. I know 8 is more than 5. So the millions column, we don't change it, it stays the same. But I know I must add 1 more because in my next column, my look to the right, it's more than 5. So the 3 becomes a 4, and then every column, every digit after must be replaced with zeros. Okay, then finally, rounding to the nearest million. So I know my million column is here. I look next door, it's a 3. I know 4 or less, I just ignore. So the 5 stays the same. So 5 stays the same, and then every number to the right is replaced with zeros. So when I round, it's 5 million. Okay. So here I have for you an example for you to try on your own, exactly the same as how we just did, but trying it on your own, rounding from the nearest 10 up to the nearest million. And the number you're going to be rounding is 7,951,428. So maybe if you just jot down your answers on a piece of paper, when you're finished, unpause the video and check whether or not you were right. Off you go.